I'd like to officially welcome you to today's webinar, Preparing for Successful OSOT, or On-Site Orientation and Training, and Overcoming those common onboarding roadblocks. I'm Jessica Birch, a training coordinator with the Corporation for National and Community Service, and I'll be the host for today's webinar. I'll also be facilitating the live Q&A throughout this session. Also joining us are Rachel Raddick, Jenny Farrell, and Scott Weinrobe from Education Northwest, who have helped to prepare today's webinar and will be managing the WebEx technology. You'll see them in the chat and Q&A to help address questions you may have during the session. And I'd really like to welcome our main speakers today. Our first main speaker is Ryan Fewens-Bliss. Ryan is a National VISTA trainer with Education Northwest, CNCS's training partner. In his day job, he serves as the Deputy Director for Community Investment at the Michigan College Access Network, or MCAN, having joined the staff in March 2013. Ryan hails from Northern Michigan and received his undergraduate and graduate degrees from Central Michigan University in Integrated Public Relations and Educational Administration and Community Leadership, respectively. Prior to joining MCAN, Ryan served local, state, and national nonprofits and educational institutions through Fewens-Bliss Consulting. He has also worked for the Jackson College Access Center, Michigan Campus Compact, and Saginaw Valley State University. Ryan has managed both VISTA and AmeriCorps state programs and continues to do so in his current role. Ryan served as a locally elected township trustee in Michigan's Bath Charter Township for almost 5 years, completing his term last November. In other words, Ryan is a busy guy, and so we're very thankful that he's here with us today. We also have with us Rachel Raddick. Rachel is a former AmeriCorps VISTA member, and she currently works at Education Northwest and provides technical assistance for local and national initiatives in volunteerism, mentoring, and school improvement. Throughout today's webinar, we will be sharing specific tools and resources to help support your work as a VISTA supervisor. These strategies and tools have been compiled into a document called Preparing for a Successful OSOT, Overcoming Common Onboarding Roadblocks. This list of tools and resources was included as a link in the webinar reminder email you received. But don't worry, we will also post this document directly on the VISTA campus along with the webinar recording. And we've also just added that link in the chat. So, when you registered for this webinar, you indicated some challenges that you were facing around the topics of on-site orientation and training, which we're going to refer to as OSOT. The top reported challenges fit into several categories and include supporting subsites with preparing for OSOT, how to support VISTAs participating in PSO Blend, and how to keep members engaged. So what we took from the challenges expressed through registration is that certain challenges can be mitigated by taking thoughtful and purposeful steps during the recruitment and onboarding process. By taking a look at common roadblocks during this period, you will set yourself up to implement the most effective OSOT possible. Because no matter how wonderful, incredible, ingenious, and brilliant your OSOT is, if the onboarding process isn't solid, your OSOT won't be able to make up for the earlier steps that were missed. So therefore, this webinar will focus on setting you up for a successful OSOT by discussing the common challenges experienced by supervisors before beginning the OSOT process. We are excited to talk with you about ways to mitigate those challenges and then discuss with you ways in which your OSOT can be built for success. So, with all that being said, here's what we hope that you get out of this webinar. We first hope that you can identify the key steps in the recruitment and onboarding process that lead to successfully bringing your members into your organization and as a VISTA member. Also, to learn those strategies to prepare for OSOT during the recruitment and onboarding process. You don't want to start thinking about OSOT once the person's on site. And last but not least is to understand the different on-site orientation needs for VISTA members participating in PSO Blend versus PSO Classic. So, I'm now going to turn it over to Ryan, who's going to get us started. Ryan, take it away.
Thank you, Jessica. Good afternoon. I am really excited to lead our discussion today. As a longtime advocate for the power of national service, I appreciate the hard work your VISTA members do for your organization and your community. And certainly as a former VISTA supervisor, I really appreciate the hard work you all do in managing the process, the programs, and the people. Listen, folks, one of the things that really frustrates me about being on a webinar is sitting at my laptop, staring at the screen for an hour. Every so often, I have to move my mouse so my screensaver doesn't turn on. You all know what I'm talking about. Our goal today is that this session is far more interactive than that. So on that note, let's begin by taking a minute to hear a little bit about your organization and where you're located, as you can see from the prompt on the screen. Please enter your response in the chat box and make sure you send it to all participants so everyone can see it. We want your comments to be visible to everyone. Please be sure to enter them in the chat panel, though, and not the Q&A panel further down the screen.
Thank you, Ryan. So we're getting everybody here. They're coming from all over the country. We have, let's see here, we have Housing Authority of Billings, Montana, and that's Teddy. We have Caitlin here with United Way Worldwide in Alexandria, Virginia. Let's take a look here. This chat's going so fast. We have people in Colorado. We have people from Points of Light, Idaho, Boston. Let's see who else here. We have Heart of Oregon Corps, which is in Bend, Oregon. Oregon, you guys are getting a lot of nasty weather. I'm so sorry. Ocean Discovery Institute in San Diego, California. Let's see. Man, everyone, Fairbanks, North Star Borough, Fairbanks. I served as a VISTA in Alaska. I love Alaska, so thank you, Brittany, for representing that great state. We have Better Together in Redmond, Oregon. We have Louisiana. We have Charity Medical Clinic in Katy, Texas. I would not be surprised if we had someone from each and every state here today. We have Florida, Georgia. You guys are coming from all over. So Sharon here said LA's best after-school enrichment program in Los Angeles, California. We also have here someone from Brunswick, Maine. We're going from California to Maine. So everywhere, you guys are serving everywhere. So first off, I think on behalf of everyone, we want to say thank you for the work that you're doing across the country, supporting your VISTA members and supporting the mission of VISTA. So we love it that you're here with us today. We're happy you're coming from all over, big and small. And Ryan, I'm going to turn it back on over to you.
Thanks, Jessica. Wow, we've got a diverse group in our session today. It's both exciting and intimidating to know that your voice is being broadcast across the country. But this diversity should make for a great opportunity to learn from each other as the session goes on. As Jessica shared, today we'll be discussing common roadblocks that can get in the way of having a successful on-site orientation. These include having an unclear VAD, late recruitment, poor readiness screening, disengagement of members post-selection, and not being ready for the VISTA's arrival. These roadblocks are organized really for the most part based on the flow of onboarding rather than in any order of priority. There really isn't one that's more critical than another. We need all of them to be overcome or we won't be as successful as we hope. Again, most of these roadblocks occur before your VISTA even arrives at your doorstep. Throughout today's presentation, we will also provide some strategies to overcoming each roadblock and tips for a successful on-site orientation and training, as you heard, known as OSOT, O-S-O-T. We hope this will help all of you to ensure your VISTA gets off to the right start. Now we'd like to hear more from you about your experience with on-site orientation and training. Please answer the poll question on the right side of your screen. In which part of on-site orientation and training do you feel most confident? That means you've got it, you're an expert in it, you feel like you've got it taken care of. Orienting and training your VISTA to the community in which they will serve, the host organization in which they serve, that's the organization probably that you work for, their year of service with AmeriCorps, the skills they'll need for their year of service, or the connection of their service to poverty alleviation. Go ahead and answer that poll right now.
Thank you, Ryan. So as Ryan mentioned, just take a few seconds to go ahead and do that on the right side of your screen. There's no right answer here. Some of you may be new organizations, some of you may be veterans, but as things come and go, it's maybe 1 year really you feel most confident about the organization, but then the next year you feel really confident about the skills that they will need for their VISTA year. So no matter where you are, just put it in there. Like I said, no right answer, no wrong answer. We'll give you a few more seconds to go ahead and make a selection. All right, it looks like the poll has ended, so it's just calculating the results of that, which always feels like it's paint drying. It takes so long when it's only actually just a few seconds. So Ryan, do you have any guesses at what you think is going to be the top one, what people are most confident about?
My guess is letter B. You folks are experts in your organization. Oh, look at that, letter B.
I think you saw the answers beforehand, right? No, I'm just kidding. So you're right, B. Most people feel most confident about the host organization, which is great. You know, followed, you know, closely among a tie about the community, skills for the year of service. Yeah, it's all pretty closely aligned, but B is the most. You were right, Ryan. I'll give it back on over to you.
Thanks. It's always nice to be told you're right. So that's really great. I knew we'd have some expertise on the webinar today. I can't wait to see what you're able to share with all of us later in the session, specific to how perhaps you orient your VISTAs to the host organization, which we'll be talking about. So let's flip the question around this time. In which part of the on-site orientation and training do you feel most challenged? You see the same answers there. Orienting and training your VISTA to the community in which they will serve, the host organization in which they'll serve, their year of service with AmeriCorps, the skills they need for their year of service, or the connection of their service to poverty alleviation. Again, go ahead and answer your, answer that poll on the right side of your screen.
Thank you again, Ryan. So this is a little different now. What do you feel most challenged about? I know when I served as a VISTA, you know, part of me, the connection of my service to poverty alleviation was difficult. I served at a domestic violence shelter, and sometimes it was hard for me to see the direct impact on poverty. But, you know, stepping back, kind of seeing the different work that the shelter did, it really got me to understand that connection. What about you, Ryan? What do you think is going to be the top one in this section?
I wonder if it's going to be C, the year of service with AmeriCorps. I know with the AmeriCorps grants that I manage, those things can be complex and can feel like they're ever-changing, and I know that sometimes is a challenge. That's my guess.
All right, you already had it once. You didn't go 2 for 2 with this one. The poll has closed. We're just waiting for those results. Let's see here, just as it calculates a little bit. All right, so let's see, it's a very close tie with, you're right, C, the year of service, and the skills that they'll need for their year of service. So those are very closely tied. But once again, Ryan, you got the edge though with C. You're right in tune with all of these supervisors. So I'm going to let you take it from here.
Thanks, Jessica. I worry that being right twice will increase the expectation you all have of me, but I'm going to try to meet it today. Thanks for sharing those challenges with all of us. Hopefully we'll teach you, we'll give you some skills, some tips on all of those sections so you can gain some tangible ideas. I know when I do a webinar, that's what I want. I want to take something from it, so when I say to my supervisor, I spent an hour on a webinar, here's what I got from it. So let's jump on into our content for the day. Our first roadblock relates to both items D and E from our polls, specifically the skills necessary to do their year of service and the connection of the service to poverty alleviation. We're talking specifically about ensuring your VAD is not broad and unclear and how essential that is to a successful OSAT. So there's a quote on your screen from a VISTA member who says, I feel like my VAD assignment is very broad and that I do not have specific things to work on to keep my day busy. I know as a supervisor that's the last thing you want. You have those VISTAs there to support you and your agency. You want to make sure they're busy. The VAD really serves two purposes. It's a tool for recruitment, and once you've found the right person, it's a tool for training and project management. The VAD should lay out exactly what you're trying to accomplish with each of your VISTA positions. I know you're all familiar with this. When there is vagueness instead of specificity, the danger of recruiting the wrong person increases, as does, frankly, the possibility of not aligning your OSAT with the long-term needs of the VISTA. For instance, if the VAD calls for a VISTA to do some grant writing, it will undoubtedly speak to those candidates that have some fundraising experience. The flip side of that is true as well. When using the VAD as a recruitment tool, it will also filter potential candidates out that would otherwise take up your time to review their materials and interview them, etc. I often think that when I post a position, I want as many applicants as possible, but what I really mean is that I want as many qualified applicants as possible. Those two things aren't necessarily the same. So be as clear as you can about what you need and what you want. There are people out there perfect for the position, and this is your best way to draw attention to you. If you need to brush up on creating a great VAD, review some resources such as Creating Effective VADs as well as a detailed sample VAD, both found on the VISTA campus, which I know you're all familiar with. Even the perfect candidate needs training. The VAD is a roadmap for a year's worth of training, beginning with OSAT and continuing throughout the year. For those of you that have just one VISTA assigned to you, the VAD can serve as a checklist for all of the training necessary for a successful year. For those of you that have more than one VISTA assigned to your organization, though, each individual VAD should be tailored to the needs for that particular position. But when you look at those VADs in aggregate, you find the themes that turn into the topics for OSAT and your year-long trainings. I know that was always really helpful to me who had a big core of VISTAs. What the VAD tells you the VISTA needs to get their year started, the VAD tells you what the VISTA needs to get the year started, but not in a theoretical way. It's actually in a literal way. What literally does the VAD say they need to do and know? Now, provide them training on those things or find them external training that will get them up to speed. You can see on the slide that our first tip for OSAT is to keep your OSAT plan updated as you change the VAD. Undoubtedly, the VAD will change from when you first write it and submit it to the time that the VISTA starts at your organization. Since the lag time between these 2 points can sometimes be months, of course things will change. What you need might change, your programming might change. As you update the VAD prior to your VISTA starting, be sure to update your OSAT plan to reflect whatever changes you make. The next roadblock that we want to talk about today is late recruitment. A supervisor submitted this quote to us. Finding ways to get the word out was a challenge, especially with the short time frame for reviewing applications, interviewing, and securing offers and acceptances. I'm in a recruitment period right now for AmeriCorps, and I feel that every day. Oftentimes, when I think about bringing on a new VISTA, I have the visions in my head of my ideal self. I'll be on top of everything. I'll have a comprehensive VAD. I'll have a position description ready to post. I'll spread the word far and wide, do targeted recruitment. I will be swimming in incredibly talented candidates. Then my real life kicks in, and I'm completely overwhelmed with my own responsibilities, both professional and personal. I like to just be transparent about that. I'm hurriedly trying to get everything together at the last minute. I hate it, yet it is this vicious cycle that I get into every time, whispering the promise to myself that next time I'll do it better. Hopefully that's not a widespread occurrence. Maybe it's just me, although when I talk to my colleagues, they often have a similar story. In order to launch into a great year of service, we've got to start early. We just have to. About 120 days early, and we have to have a plan. You can see on the screen our OSAT tip number 2 is on the slide. It's never too early to start thinking about OSAT. While you won't be able to finalize every detail of your on-site orientation and training, beginning to make an outline of the things you'd like to do and or have covered will help save you time later when your VISTA's at your doorstep. I hate feeling unprepared, and I hate even more looking unprepared, so sketching out the design of OSAT over time will help avoid those situations. My staff often tells me that I have the best ideas, but they're often way too late. OSAT is one of those situations where I could totally see myself coming up with a great idea, but it's like the day before the VISTA starts. Then I'd be really disappointed that it was too late to pull it off. So start thinking about those great ideas now and keeping track of them. A couple of years ago, Vista leaders developed a recruitment calendar tool. The recruitment calendar is a downloadable file that helps you work backward from the start of PSO by inputting the PSO start date into the spreadsheet, and then all of the other recruitment activities are then automatically provided deadlines based on that original date that you put in. It helps keep you on track with enough time to do all the things I described a few moments ago, except this time you'll have a tool to ensure that those things can actually happen. Just a reminder, this document was developed for the PSO Classic model, so you may need to tweak it a bit if you're planning on having your VISTA candidates attend one of the PSO blend sessions. Another great strategy is to utilize e-grants. Using the opportunity listing functionality allows you to post your open VISTA positions nationally to be displayed on the MyAmericorps system. I found that the people recruited from the system are the most interested in the concept of doing a year of service and are thus less likely to leave without completing, which is a challenge I know we all face. You may not be the person in your office that uses e-grants, but setting up an account is really simple. Just reach out to your program officer for support. Some additional resources in this area that you'll find on the VISTA campus include accessing e-grants, AmeriCorps VISTA applicant tracking tool, recruiting, attracting successful VISTAs, which is a webinar. Now that we've built in the time we need for recruitment, let's talk about selection. Another roadblock that takes place prior to a VISTA arriving to begin their year of service is poor readiness screening. You see on the screen another quote from one of our real-life VISTA supervisors. My VISTA does not know how to drive and does not have a driver's license, so cannot get to the places I need them to be unless I drive. I know that that can be really frustrating. Readiness screening is important when bringing really anyone new into your organization, but for VISTA members, it just looks a little different. There are some unique parts of the VISTA experience that candidates must fully understand and buy into prior to accepting the position, heading off to PSO and then showing up ready to serve. Recruiting candidates that understand they're signing up for a year of service rather than a traditional job is really, really important. Primary to this issue is the living allowance versus a standard wage. If a candidate hasn't prepared for that reality, they just aren't going to last long. Your screening must include their understanding of joining that something larger, that something bigger than themselves. The role of the education award and the end of service stipend is important here, as is the commitment to staying the entire year of service. This is a concept where many of the AmeriCorps regulations can be discussed as well. I've had VISTA members in the past that didn't fully grasp the rules and the policies about advocacy specifically, and then having come up in community organizing, they felt really limited and constrained by some of the guidelines to their year of service, which made their year honestly a struggle. I found that recruiting using that year of service lens makes for a better experience for everyone, especially around expectations. It's critical to screen for readiness for the particular PSO that CNCS has assigned to us. For instance, if you've got a candidate who is not able to travel long distance overnight for several consecutive nights, PSO Classic just is going to be a deal breaker. If you have a candidate that's uncomfortable with online learning, PSO Blend obviously is going to be a deal breaker. You should be working with your state program officer to determine which PSO events to recruit for. If you know that your site or specific candidate cannot succeed in one specific type of PSO, either Blend or Classic, you should notify your state program officer, and they'll work with you to ensure that you can have candidates attend the appropriate PSO type. That's really important. I mentioned travel just a moment ago in our supervisor quote in relation to the type of PSO a VISTA candidate would attend. This is an issue of whether you will be requiring travel as part of a VISTA's VAD. If travel is part of the service, you'll need to screen for the ability to do so. Just like our introductory quote referenced, if having a viable driver license and having a working vehicle are part of your requirements, Those are important screening questions so everyone understands the expectations. Finally, the schedule of service that you're recruiting for is also incredibly important. Just as you'd ask in an interview for a job a candidate's ability to work nights and weekends, if that's part of how the VAD will be carried out, those are key things to screen for. The vistas that I supervised served on college campuses, so there were always activities happening late at night and on weekends. If someone couldn't participate in that type of activity, they wouldn't have been successful in their year of service. They just wouldn't have been a good fit for our particular program. Since these are all just samples of items that require particular screening due to the complexities of AmeriCorps Vista, it's important to think through the items that matter to you as a part of this recruitment process. The simple act of writing them down or even brainstorming them on a whiteboard, that's what I like to do, helps keep them at the forefront. You just got to think about this stuff early. Our third OSAT tip is to be specific in your opportunity posting. Your position posting, like a job posting. When you post your open VISTA position to recruit candidates, be really specific about some of these screening items. It'll help filter out candidates that wouldn't be a good fit as it pertains to these specific topics. If you need someone with a valid driver's license and a working vehicle, as we discussed, put it right in the posting. If you want someone who's committed for the full year, and frankly, who doesn't, be sure to play up this aspect of the position. If nights and weekends are required, simply say so. Folks in which these things don't fit well will just choose not to apply for the position, which will increase your readiness screening without much effort actually on your part. Hopefully the candidates that do apply then will be eager to fill the needs that you've already communicated. There's some great tools on the resource document we shared around readiness screening that will help you get started. Check out Screening VISTA Applicants and search for applicants in My AmeriCorps. All right, Jessica, I've been talking for quite a while. I think we should hear from our participants.
Thank you, Ryan, and we loved everything you had to say. Those top three onboarding roadblocks, it's really helpful, and I can tell that a lot of people have had those kind of same struggles. So now we're going to want to hear, as Ryan mentioned, from you in the audience. We've given you a lot to think about so far. We've talked about some 3 key roadblocks: an unclear VAD, late recruitment, and then poor readiness screening. So what kind of questions do you have about what's been presented so far? I'm going to ask the operator to join us here and just let us know how we can ask a question over the phone. Operator, are you there?
Yes, the phone lines are now open for questions. If you'd like to ask a question over the phone, please press *1 and record your name. If you'd like to withdraw your question, press *2. Thank you.
Thank you. And just as a reminder, you can always ask a question using the Q&A panel located at the right of your screen. So we do have some questions coming in. Gloria here asks, should we include the amount of the stipend in the posting as well? Ryan, what would you recommend?
I would say absolutely. Again, this is going to be a filter for people out and a filter for people in. If folks go through the process and find out later that they're going to be making, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 a year, I mean, that can have what I call sticker shock to it. So I would absolutely recommend being just completely upfront and, again, playing up that year of service mentality. I talk a lot about this like the military, like you're giving back to your country and local communities, and try to play up that aspect because, frankly, it's true, but also it will be a benefit to the recruitment process.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and speaking from my end about someone who goes to PSO frequently, definitely we had a session that asked, how many people don't know how much they're going to make, and there are quite a few hands that get raised. We don't want them finding out at PSO that they don't know what they're making, so definitely prevent that sticker shock and let them know ahead of time. As Ryan mentioned, you might not get as many applicants, but you're going to get the ones that are really serious, that really understand the commitment, and it's going to not waste your time or a potential candidate. So, just giving them that information up front is really helpful. Let's take a look here. Caitlin here asked, she said, where can we find the tool that automatically lays out the recruitment schedule if you put in a PSO date? So, Caitlin, we're going to post the link in the chat. It is also on that document. resources document that we'll send out to you as well. But it can be found on the Vista campus, and we'll post that here in the chat message or in the chat box here shortly. Let me go to the phone. Operator, do we have any questions coming in over the phone?
I'm not showing any questions yet in the queue. However, again, if you would like to ask a question, just please press *1 and record your name.
Great. Thank you so much. And we just got that. The resource guide has been posted. It's the full list of all the resources we're sharing here today, and it is in there, Caitlin, so take a look at that. We also got another question here. Ryan, this is a good one. I didn't anticipate this one. So Travis here asks, can you speak to Vista's asking if they have an outside job and best practices around response and supporting this? Ryan, have you had experience with Vistas who want to seek an outside job, and how have you handled that?
Well, to be honest, Jessica, I have had that experience, but it was back when the regulation was that they couldn't have an outside job, so my answer was really, really easy in that. But I think now it's really, really important to understanding what is necessary for the position, what's necessary to achieve what's laid out in the VAD. Are they able to do those things and have outside employment, depending on the number of hours and the type of work? And if that is the case, then absolutely, they're welcome to do that by policy. But at the end of the day, it really is up to you as a supervisor to determine if you believe that that can happen. Jessica, did I speak against any of the CNCS's rules or regulations there?
You didn't, but I do have to say it was a whole heck of a lot easier for supervisors to answer that question before we had the employment policy. So yeah, just talk it out with your Vista. We understand that, now that this restriction has been lifted, that they may want to seek outside employment. And we reiterate to them frequently that Vista has to be their priority. Make sure to know that up front. Maybe that's a good way to, readiness screening. What is their availability? Do they have an outside job? What is their commitment? Because it is really hard. You have a Vista who's just started, who they're on the living allowance, which is low, and then they're like, I need this other job, but it conflicts with my service hours, but I really need to keep it. And you like the Vista, and you really want to, approve it, but at the same time, it conflicts with service, and it's not fulfilling fully what the Vista, assignment description is. Those can be hard conversations, so, start that out ahead of time. When you're recruiting them, let them know that, this is the priority. Have that discussion with them, so hopefully to mitigate any of those lasting concerns that they may have once they join. Another question here, Ryan, you may have some experience with this. When posting on some college campus job boards, they request pay info and a category of the role. I guess would you call it an internship, paid or unpaid? I feel that Vista's service doesn't fit well. But it's not just a volunteer spot either. Have you had any experience posting on those, and how do you categorize it?
Yeah, I've had a lot of experience posting on those, actually. As I mentioned, when I supervised Vistas, they were housed on college campuses. So one of the things I did was took the opportunity to educate the on-campus career services offices and advocated for another category called Year of Service or National Service, something like that, that it could be categorized in. And where an office has a lot of ability to change their portal, they were really open to that because it made a lot of sense. Where they did not have a lot of control over their portal, they weren't able to do that. I don't categorize Vista service as an internship. In fact, when I do training of Vistas, I make sure they understand they are not students and they are not interns, even though some of them might actually be students, but in this sense, they're not acting as part of their student experience. And so I usually do post it as if it is a full job position, but then I make sure to have that living allowance in the position description and to describe it throughout the position description as a year of service and use the word AmeriCorps and use the logo when I can to make it really clear. Because at the end of the day, I personally take this as a professional experience, and I hope Vistas feel that it is, and I think treating it that way from the forefront sets the tone.
That's great. Thank you, Ryan. So Emily here asked, can we just say no to a full-time student who also wants to be a Vista? So, you know, Vistas can attend school, but the overarching thing with that is that it can't interfere with their Vista service, and the supervisor and potentially the state office all need to sign off on that and approve that and understand what that commitment is. You know, I would, you know, have a conversation with that Vista and say, hey, you know, it just doesn't work with the schedule or whatever the circumstance may be. And then, you know, maybe contact the state office if you have any questions about whether it's okay for them to do it or if it's not. But it's not a requirement that you have to say yes. I mean, it needs to make sure that it's not going to interfere with their service. And if what they've told you about their school schedule sounds like it will interfere, then yes, you can say you either can't be in school right now or you have to adjust your hours, or maybe Vista isn't right for you at this time. Another question here, and then we'll move on, is Aisha, I apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong, asked, how have you handled Vistas working on campaigns not directly associated with their service description? So that's a very loaded question, and I have a lot of other questions about that. So the VISTA members are bound by the Hatch Act, which limits their political activity, not only when they're, you know, serving as a VISTA, but also sometimes on their off hours. So, for example, VISTAs cannot raise money on behalf of a partisan candidate at any time during their VISTA year. While some other things just say, like, you just can't be in your VISTA apparel or representing VISTA while you're doing something political. I would definitely read up on the Hatch Act and read the VISTA member handbook about those restrictions or what's permissible and what's not. If you have any questions, you can always go to your program officer at the state, and they should be able to assist you. Ryan, do you have anything to add on that? Have you had VISTAs who had questions about campaigning?
Yeah, tons of them, actually. And I think what you just said summed it up really nicely. But I think for me, the most important thing that you said was that last line, talking to your program officer at the corporation state office. What I have found working with multiple state offices is that the state director's interpretation of what this means is just a little bit different from state to state. And so getting them to weigh in and be really clear with you about their expectations makes it really easy for you as a VISTA supervisor to say, listen, here's what our grantor said, so here's what it's going to be. I always like shifting the blame when I can do so, and so the corporation state offices make it easy to do so.
Thank you, Ryan. So that sounds like all the questions that we have right now. So thank you all for those questions. Keep them coming. I'm going to hand this now over to our other guest speaker here today, Rachel Raddick, who's going to talk about our fourth roadblock. Rachel.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you, everyone, for being with us today. I'm going to talk about disengagement post-selection, that is, after you have selected or hired your VISTA member. So for about the past 14 or 15 years, I've had the privilege, really, to create and facilitate training programs for both educators and volunteer and mentor programs around the country. And a key lesson that I've learned is the importance of really keeping participants engaged throughout their service and their training. After, you know, a successful recruitment and screening process in which you've worked really hard, you probably feel done. You've got your great VISTA, you've given them a start date, and now you're good to go. But keeping your VISTA engaged during the time between selection and start date is critical to a successful onboarding. As one supervisor, as you can see on the slide, said, people show up to PSO and they tell me they don't know where they're supposed to go on their first day of service. I'm happy to help in any way I can, but this should have been communicated to them when they were hired. So let's talk about this post-selection period and some tips for how you can keep your VISTA engaged. First, support their transition. Once your VISTA candidate is selected and has accepted the offer, be sure to support them in the transition time. This really does include ensuring that they're able to relocate successfully if that's necessary. There's nothing that will spoil a transition more like not being able to find housing in your new community. The supervisors who have the approach that these are adults who can manage their own lives. True, but this approach also takes the risk in having things implode, often for small problems that could have been avoided. So remember that your long-term success is invested in this VISTA, so supervisors have to be invested in ensuring all aspects of a successful transition. One great webinar to check out that will pop up in the chat is Helping Your Members Thrive. It has some really good ideas on supporting your VISTA with things like housing and budgeting and integrating into the new community, and this is a great time period after selection to help your VISTAs in these areas and to keep them engaged. Next, focus on the year of service. And Ryan talked about this. We all focus on retention of our VISTA members during their year of service, but we also have to prioritize the retention of our newly hired VISTAs before they even start. Keeping this in mind during the selection process is key. It will be tempting to find employment that pays more than the living allowance during this time period, and it's hard for you to argue against someone who has specific financial interests. It's not a battle easily won. We have to keep the future VISTA's attention on this great year-long commitment to their country and community that they've just made. And again, as Ryan said, focusing on the year of service reminds them that this isn't just a job, but a commitment to fighting poverty for a year that they should be very proud of. Also, invite them on site. If your future VISTA is local, invite them to attend an organizational event or a meeting or a gathering. This gives them extra time to get to know people at the site, the organization, and your workplace. Actually, just days after my own selection as a VISTA supporting a local Head Start program, I was invited to join a staff celebration. It was a birthday. It was fun. It was a helpful way to get involved and feel part of the organization, meet folks, even before I was actually a part of the organization. Next, think about sending them information. So, okay, nobody likes homework per se, but everyone likes to feel prepared. Send your future VISTAs some background reading, news articles, or stories about your organization. Is there a research study or other readings that most people in your field are familiar with? And pass it along so that your VISTA doesn't feel clueless when others discuss these concepts. In most cases, when your VISTA gets this information, they're going to feel excited and eager to learn about their new role, which fits in with OSOT tip number 4. Share the OSOT plan with your VISTA candidate before they start. After selection, this is a great time to do this. Give them an outline of what to expect and let them add to it. Are they new to the community? Maybe they want a tour of the areas or organizations that your agency serves. Maybe they're local and they want to be introduced to community members in their new role as a VISTA member. Making your OSOT responsive to emerging needs before they start is key. And make connections. So we know that retention basically all boils down to person-to-person connection. And you can help create some connections with your VISTA and other VISTAs currently serving in your organization, even or in their region. If they have some positive social relationships, they're more likely to feel that they will be missed if they back out before they start the year. And let them know that you're excited. The bottom line, just let them know that you can't wait for their arrival. Everyone wants to feel wanted and needed. If your VISTA knows you're excited and you're looking forward to their year of service, they're going to feel more excited and look forward to their year as well. Defeat, if you can, any doubts about their decision to become a VISTA by making it seem like the most fun, coolest thing that they're going to do in their life. And again, it all really boils down to continuous communication. All of these things can be achieved through talking and keeping in touch with your VISTA after selection. Simple things like checking in on their search for housing. Have they completed all their paperwork? When they're in town, if they're relocating, you can take them to lunch. Help them stay engaged really during this downtime between selection and PSO. It might sound like a lot of effort, but it really pays off in the end. It's sort of like wining and dining your recruits, but without the expensive dinner. So I wish you all luck, and thank you again for all of your hard work. Thank you for letting me join you today. Ryan, back to you.
Thanks, Rachel. I have certainly lost a vista or two between the hiring and showing up for PSO, and it's incredibly frustrating and it's difficult to fix quickly, so your tips are really appreciated. Let's wrap up the content for the day. Our fifth and final roadblock we'll discuss takes place once your vista has been selected and trained, if you're talking about PSO Classic, or selected and about to start national training while at the same time undergoing OSAT, which is what happens with PSO Blend. One supervisor spoke specifically about this. My biggest challenge is the new blended courses. Not every Vista is an online learner. Having trained many Vistas in PSO Blend, I can vouch for that quote, certainly. Sometimes the gear up for the arrival of a Vista takes all of our energy and focus. Then once they begin their service, we're left scrambling to help them hit the ground running. I tell the Vistas in each PSO that I facilitate that they only have 1 year to accomplish what they're trying to do. They don't want to waste one darn minute. So it's incumbent upon us as supervisors to make sure that they don't. As you begin to think about the arrival of your Vista or Vistas, think about 4 key elements that you want to be prepared to provide as soon as you're able and as soon as it's appropriate. The first is orienting and training your Vista to your organization or host site. So again, most of you felt like you had some strength in this area. Being purposeful in orienting your Vista to the organization will help support a successful year of service in its entirety. I really recommend setting aside several hours at the beginning of the year of service to provide key information and to introduce the Vista around the organization. Again, help them feel welcomed and valued and excited to be there. The second key element in which to orient and train your Vista is to the community. Your Vista needs to understand the community in which they'll serve. Oftentimes, Vistas are not serving in a community in which they're familiar. In those cases, helping to describe the culture and the governance, the systems, the politics, the data profile of the community will ensure their service has some context and that they don't fall into that classic white knight syndrome where they see themselves riding into town on their pale steed to save the townspeople from poverty. Help them to enter the community respectfully and to understand their place. This is huge. I recommend ongoing orientation to the community throughout the year of service. Take them to lunch in favorite eateries, send them to city council meetings to observe, introduce them to everyone you encounter when they accompany you to meetings. It's part of building their own network. Even buy them a subscription to the local newspaper so they know what's going on. A third key element to a successful OSAT is orienting and training your Vista on the tasks they will be completing and the knowledge they'll need to do so. So review their VAD and ask, again, what skills and knowledge will they need to complete their tasks, their assignments, their objectives, and their goals, all part of that VAD. Did you bring them on board because they already had all of those skills and knowledge? If the answer is no, how do you and they plan to ensure that they gain them over time? Is there training available internally or externally in which they can participate? Our OSAT tip number 5 encourages all supervisors to prepare for the arrival of the Vista member by aligning the OSAT with the different needs of members participating, again, in PSO Blend versus Classic. For Classic, your Vista should arrive on-site filled with excitement and ideas about poverty and volunteer mobilization and certainly their VAD. Using OSAT to build upon and channel that excitement will help your Vista get moving quickly and to help them feel empowered. But for PSO Blend, your Vista will start on site on the same day that their PSO starts. That's very different. So you've got to build the PSO Blend assignments into your current OSAT plan so the VISTA feels a natural flow between the digital and the in-person training. That brings me to our fourth key element. PSO Blend specifically includes some specific benefits that are important to know. Most important, at least in my opinion, is that you've got much more flexibility in when you start a VISTA within the year, and you don't have a week's waiting period before your VISTA shows up at the organization to serve. While it can feel like your VISTA is distracted with this other activity during the PSO Blend, a proper OSAT plan, again, will encompass the blend learning and activities within the larger picture of what you're trying to do as the supervisor. It should be complementary instead of conflicting. So, for example, in both PSO types, Blend and Classic, facilitators ask VISTAs to review their VAD and identify skills they currently have that will help achieve the project goals. In Classic, they're given a workbook that includes what we call the IDP, Individualized Development Plan, in which they can actually write these things down. They identify the priority level of those skills, identify the type of skill it is, and even identify possible ways to gain that skill. For Blend, VISTAs don't complete the IDP, but you have the opportunity to do this as you're planning right alongside them, so you can do it together. That's actually a big advantage. In addition to the Blend curriculum, it includes supervisors. That is, VISTAs are supposed to be discussing the topics with you from the Blend course, sharing their work product for feedback and asking you very specific and particular questions. So you have to ensure that you've allowed yourself the time to play this role by making this a part of your OSAT. Just build it right in. Use this time to help your VISTA better understand the organization. The PSO Blend curriculum is always evolving. I think that's another strength of it, and it's improving. But currently, as it stands right now, there's assignments related to reviewing the VAD for the VISTA to participate in. There's assignments related to researching material for OSAT, which is helpful to you. And there's some assignments around creating a data profile for the community, and all of those assignments require supervisor buy-in and participation, meaning they can't turn them in without talking to you about them first. So all of these assignments are a great way for your VISTA to better understand your organization, the community that it serves, and the tasks that they're responsible for completing as part of your organization's greater mission. The resource Pre-Service Orientation Blended Curriculum allows VISTA supervisors to adjust your OSAT to fit the PSO Blend schedule and to support your VISTA members as they participate in those courses. It's really a great tool to have on hand. Quick note, the VISTA Blend page is currently being updated to reflect some changes to the curriculum and timeline for 2017. As I said, it's always evolving and improving. That's happening as we speak. The resources on the page now are what was in place for the last iteration of PSO Blend. Once the new changes are effective, you'll be notified that an up-to-date resource is available. So let's talk about some of these additional things to keep in mind to support your VISTA member participating in PSO Blend. The first is internet access. The PSO Blend requires a strong internet an internet connection on-site or at least nearby, somewhere where the VISTA can go that has the technology to participate in that online coursework. If your agency doesn't have Wi-Fi or a wired internet, your VISTA is going to have to find a safe and quiet place to find a connection to participate. The VISTA will also need a laptop, desktop computer perhaps, to access the system, preferably with a webcam, to participate in the virtual meetings that we hold. If these are a problem to acquire, you should share that with your corporation state office, and they'll know that PSO Blend is really not an option for your VISTAs. The second is time to participate in the webinars. There are several required webinars, just like we're doing now, and live meetups that occur during this three-week period of PSO Blend. Supervisors should not plan your activities or organizational activities with the VISTA during these time periods because they've got to be participating in the Blend. The VISTA should know exactly when they're required to participate live. They should know that right away before the Blend even starts, and should use whatever calendaring system you use in your office to mark themselves unavailable to you and to others. Also note that all supervisors who have a member who's going to participate in Blend, you'll get a letter from Vista via email that provides all these important dates that I'm talking about. So definitely watch for that email and follow up with the state office if you don't get one. So that's it for new content. Let's do a quick recap of what we covered in the webinar today. First, create a clear and detailed VAD. That was what we discussed at the very beginning. Remember that the clear VAD is going to entice the right candidates in and filter the wrong candidates out. Next, be sure to provide ample time for recruiting your VISTA member, a whopping at least 120 days. And remember to use that VISTA recruitment calendar and eGrants for a smooth recruitment. Also ensure that your screening process clarifies the unique parts of the VISTA experience. We've talked about that in several places. Remember to make sure your VISTA is engaged post-selection. So once you select them, they show up when you need them to show up and don't find other employment or other opportunities. And finally, be ready for your VISTA's arrival. Be sure you have a plan in place to help your member become knowledgeable about your organization, the community, and the specific goals and tasks of their particular project. If your VISTA member is going to participate in PSO Blend, make sure they have arranged for access to needed technology, just as we just discussed, and the time your VISTA is going to need to complete that training over the course of that 3-week period. Thank you so much for your attention while we discussed these common roadblocks today. Your participation in the polls and the chat questions was really, really helpful. It's been great being your presenter today and to think more with you about this topic. I could go on for days, but since we are short on time, I will just say thank you and turn it back over to our friend Jessica from CNCS.
Thank you so much, Ryan, and thank you all for joining us. I know we're at 3 o'clock. I want to respect everyone's time. We do just have a few more slides here. Want to make sure that we get all the meat that we can so you guys can be best prepared for OSAT. So OSAT, next steps. So as Ryan mentioned, those were the key roadblocks. So you have everybody ready. They're all prepared. They're ready to go. You screened them. I do want to just talk about the design facets of OSAT. So once they're ready to go, once they're on site, there are a few things to just keep in mind. We have an on-demand webinar dedicated to this topic in pretty good detail, and we are inserting the link into the chat box. The webinar is called OSAT Makeover, and it really dives deep into different ways that you can make your OSAT engaging, responsive, and customized. So what do we mean by that? So first, a customized OSAT will be shaped by the VAD and the community needs and the project goals. So it will also be shaped by your members' strengths, skills, and experience. So we talked a little bit about making it responsive, which we'll talk here in a little bit, but you want to make sure it's customized to that member, to that position, and what they bring to the table. For example, a training at a hospital for a neurosurgeon is going to be a lot different than someone who's doing billing for the hospital. And while your VISTAs aren't doing neurosurgery, at least they shouldn't be because that would be direct service, their OSAT needs to be customized, tailored to them and what they need. So another thing, because you want people to enjoy the OSAT, is that it needs to be engaging and interactive, which means incorporating adult learning principles. So you want to make it an active experience. And what I mean by that is if members need to learn about community meeting facilitation protocols, you can have them participate and observe a local meeting, watch a video of a local meeting, review a case study of mistakes someone made trying to facilitate a local meeting, or hear a current VISTA talk about their meeting experiences. There are many other adult learning principles, such as peer learning, reflection, experimentation, that we do review in depth in that OSAT Makeover webinar. And lastly, and not least, your OSAT needs to be responsive. We're going to keep saying it again. You need to make it flexible and to prepare for things that may just come up once that person's there. So you need to discover the needs that you may not have thought about yet. Check in with your member after PSO or during PSO Blend to find out what questions they still have and discuss training needs with other staff and solicit feedback from your members by conducting a training evaluation at the end of your on-site orientation and training. This is something you can even do now. If you have Vistas on board right now, but you're going to bring on new Vistas here soon, ask them, what did you like about OSOT? What do you wish would have been an OSOT? They can really help inform from a viewpoint of a Vista how your OSOT's really doing. So do that, make it engaging, responsive, and customized, and you're going to be good to go. So we encourage you to review that on-demand webinar and learn about those detailed steps. It really walks you through it. It gives you a lot of good things that you can incorporate, whether you're a large project or a small project. So I know we're over time, but we are going to stay here to answer any questions that you may have. So I understand if you need to go. You're busy, busy people. But we will be here to answer those questions because we know that this is an important topic. Before we get there, we want to see if you can do our evaluation for us. This really lets us know what you liked, what you got out of the webinar, what you would like to see in the future. We read these. We really take these into account. You really have the power to tell us what you want to hear because we're here for you. So please let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want to see more of, and we will get it for you. So we're going to do question and answer again. Remember to ask a question verbally. You can call in the number on the slide, press *1, and state your name clearly, and then we can take questions from the phone. And then also remember you can post in the Q&A panel. So let's go to the Q&A panel and see if we have some questions in here. Teddy here asked, in the past, I have been told to use the question list given to me from the project leader. As a host site, I would like to change what I can ask as I'm talking to them. Is that a problem? Ryan, have you had any experience in that? Maybe changing some questions, or did you have a project like director or leader and you were a host site, or any experience in that?
I do. Unfortunately, it was as the project host site leader. And so I was the one giving other people those sample questions to use. So I'll speak from that perspective, that there's usually a reason that they're doing that, either something they've written into their grant, some sort of process that their HR requires them to do, or perhaps some sort of commitment to uniformity across all of the sites that are interviewing. But I certainly had sites that would call me up and say, listen, on this college campus, XYZ is different. We need to talk about that. Can we add a question or change a question to do that? And, you know, maybe it's my approach to this work, but I always said yes, of course. We want that to be the best fit for the VISTA candidates and the best fit for the host site, the sub-site, and so I was always open to that. So my best advice, speaking from my perspective, would be call your host site, your project sponsor up and say, here's the reasons why we want to tweak this. How married are you to making sure that this stays the same?
Thank you, Ryan. That's perfect. Yeah, make sure, I mean, project leaders and project directors want to make sure that, that you can successfully onboard somebody and ask those questions. Just make sure to run it by them and see if there's any concerns there. I'm going to go to the operator. Operator, do we have any questions over the phone?
I'm not showing any questions at this time.
Great. Thank you so much. One question that did come in that may not pertain to everyone on this webinar, but I'll answer it here just in case this question is on people's mind. Someone here asked that I have a member starting in the PSO blend on the 30th of January. When will I receive the schedule for that PSO blend? So that's a great question. You will receive that in the next day or two. If not tomorrow, definitely on Thursday. You'll receive an email that gives you all the resources you need to know what your responsibilities are for PSO blend, what the members' responsibilities are, and the schedule of all the assignments, all the live sessions, and all the webinars. So keep an eye out for that. If you don't have it by the end of the week, please, as Ryan said, go to your state program officer and they can make sure you get that. We are making sure that supervisors get that information because you really are one of the main keys to ensuring that a VISTA has a successful year. So we want to make sure that you are informed. let's take a look here. Another person here has a question. Can we get a copy of what our Vistas see and are required to complete so we might better assist them? That is a great question. So as Ryan mentioned, our curriculum is always changing and evolving. We are right now in the midst of updating our curriculum and posting those assignments on the Vista campus. So we will post them to the Vista campus PSO Blend curriculum page. We will give those out there so that you can kind of see what the Vistas are seeing. And that you might be able to assist them, or if they have questions, that they can come to you. But that will be posted here within the next week or so that you can see that. Let's see here. One other question here we have is from Philip. He said, we are a year one Vista sponsoring organization. For more experienced sponsoring organizations, how many recruits have come through eGrants or the My AmeriCorps system versus internal recruitment? Ryan, do you have any thoughts about that? What is your ratio of people who've come through the portal as a recruitment, or like outside, like Indeed or something of that nature?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I'm sort of going to be estimating, but I would guess that probably 25% of the recruits or the candidates or applicants perhaps for the program I ran came from the My AmeriCorps portal, and the 75% from other local recruitment efforts. So it certainly isn't the end-all, be-all, but again, as I mentioned earlier, what I found was that the recruits who came through that portal, they went to the AmeriCorps portal for a purpose. They already got what AmeriCorps was. They knew they wanted to do a year of service, and so I didn't have to filter them for those reasons, whereas if I posted a job posting in the local newspaper, I did have to filter a lot of candidates for that. So while it was a smaller proportion, most often they turned into great recruits and really great Vistas who, in my experience, also went on to be Vista leaders and professionals in this field. So I always thought it was a great place to spend some time.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's a good question. I was not anticipating that one. You guys are coming up with some good questions I would not have thought of, so thank you. So we have another question here. What are your thoughts on Vista's volunteering with the organization prior to service? Brian, have you ever had anybody, like maybe just be a local volunteer before they started Vista?
Yeah, again, all of my Vistas were in college campuses, so often some of them were students in the offices in which they were then hired as Vistas once they had graduated, because we required ours to have a post-secondary degree. And it was wonderful. They had experience, they knew the people, sort of like Rachel was talking about, getting folks plugged in prior to them showing up for PSO or showing up at your doorstep. I found it to be really, really beneficial.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off that, yeah, you kind of already get that built in. They're already kind of part of the group. Everyone knows them. One thing to make sure is that if someone is volunteering at your organization ahead of time, that they're not going to be doing the exact same thing as they would be doing as a Vista. So, Vistas, they're not meant to take the position of someone who's paid, but also if someone's just wanting to, volunteer with your organization ahead of time, make sure they're not doing assignments related to their VAD prior to them being officially a Vista member. We want to make sure that that year of service is used for that Vista assignment, and that, they're doing the work of a Vista while they are a Vista. Definitely, having them, serve in the organization in another way ahead of time is fantastic. Just make sure they're not doing the things that they would be doing on their VAD before they officially start.
Jessica, it's also a good chance for your Vistas to dip their toe in the direct service offerings that your organization offers, because they're not supposed to be doing that during their Vista year, but that can really add some context to their service. It can help inform their service when they do start their year of service. So, if you're a soup kitchen or homeless shelter and you're bringing on a Vista to do some grant writing, they probably, at least they shouldn't be, doing a lot of direct service with the clients during their Vista year. But this is a chance for them to actually have that experience that will help them write a much more accurate and passionate grant application to potential funders. So it's a good opportunity to give them some experience in some of those other areas.
That's true. I didn't even think about that, Ryan. That is true. It can inform what they're going to be doing in a capacity building role by seeing what is done in the direct service level at that organization. Travis here asked, is there a limit or maximum number of hours that can be dedicated to orientation or training time for VISTAs? So there's not necessarily like a limit or a max. I mean, someone shouldn't be going through OSOT, for their first 9 months of service. And you shouldn't be saying, hey, you need to be here for 14 hours today to do OSOT. But there's not like a maximum number of hours. It has to be done within 24 hours or anything like that. Ryan, have you set any kind of like best practice of, I try to keep my OSOT to 3 weeks, no more than 4, but no less than 2? Do you have any practices around that?
I've never put any hard and fast deadlines on it like that, but that's because I've always had ongoing training, professional development sessions for my VISTAs throughout the year. So eventually you get to the point where you're doing something else. It's a training that's necessary from their VAD or from their VADs in aggregate if you've got a core that they need for that time period in which the year falls, which might be 3 months in or 6 months in. I suspect you might be asking that question because you've got familiarity with AmeriCorps state and national programs, which do have a hard cap on how many training hours an AmeriCorps member can get. VISTA is different from that, and so there isn't sort of by policy a cap like there is for AmeriCorps state and national.
I love that you know a lot about state and national. I did not even know there was a cap there. Oh, Brian, you're just so knowledgeable. So I'm going to go to the operator. Operator, do we have any questions over the phone?
I'm not showing any questions in the queue at this time.
Great. Thank you so much. So it looks like we've got to all of your questions. I want to say another big thank you to everyone who stayed here with us. Hopefully we got your questions answered. Hopefully you learned some great tips from Ryan and Rachel. They truly are rock stars. They have great experience in this. So take what they've learned either the hard way or through being proactive, and onboard your VISTA so you can have a great OSOT. And we also hope to see you here again very soon. We will be having a webinar next month. It's a sub-site supervisor orientation. There is a national training for supervisors that we hold in person along with the PSO. This is like a mini version of that, directed at people who are sub-site supervisors. So please join us February 21st at 2 p.m. Eastern. Also, we have an upcoming VISTA member webinar that I recommend you tell your VISTAs about. It's starting off right, professional workplace success. I know that a lot of you in the registration data or in feedback say, my VISTA does not understand work culture, they don't understand professionalism, make them sit in on this webinar. If that sounds like one of your VISTAs, have them sit on here. We want to make sure that, that they kind of understand how to be successful in a professional environment. So once again, thank you, Rachel, thank you, Ryan, thank you, Scott, Jenny, and everyone else behind the scenes who made this happen, and most of all, thank you, supervisors, for all that you do to further the mission of VISTA and to support your members. Have a great rest of your day.